All right. This is Joey, and I am the pastor.
Are you sure about
Pastor, Jared. Hey, Jared.
that? I'm confused.
Come
Yeah,
on, Jared. Just be a little happier right now.
this is not Pastor Jared. This is Jared, and I'm very happy. And yeah,
You're, hey, yeah. So this is how we do it. My name's Joey, and I'm the pastor, and then you say, and I'm Jared, and I'm the doctor. And then you can call everybody mother effers.
why would I want to do that?
Because you're the doctor, and there's not a lot of doctor listeners right now. If you're a doctor listener right now, please email me, and then I'll tell Jared that there's not a lot of doctor listeners. And
What's a doctor listener?
Someone with a doctorate's degree that's listening right now.
Can it be a medical doctor?
Yes.
So any kind of doctor.
Yes, not like a nickname like yo, I'm the doc. That doesn't work.
So like Doc Rivers wouldn't count.
Not Doc Rivers, right?
Not Doc Rivers.
This is the pastor with no answers. And speaking of Doc Rivers, can you name 3 other players on those old school Atlanta Hawk teams? Come on, let's do it. 3.
I'm going to say Moses Malone.
Yep.
I'm going to say Dominique Wilkins.
Yep.
And I'm going to say I don't know anymore.
And I'm going to add to that Spud Webb, you dummy.
Oh, Spud Webb.
Stupid idiot.
Yeah.
Kevin Willis.
Okay.
John Konkak. And that may be all I could do. I love those Hawks team. In fact, I think those Hawks teams, I hate to admit this, like took a little bit of my loyalty from the Celtics. And it was because I was such a Dominique fan. I thought he looked cool. I thought he had a cool name. I thought that his dunks were just unbelievable. And I think he got ripped. Michael Jordan was in Chicago when he won that slam dunk contest, and he simply jumped from the free throw line. Freaking Dominique Wilkins.
Wait. Simply? I mean, that was
I'm telling
a dunk.
Well, in comparison to Dominique Wilkins basically doing a 360, then putting the ball under or between his legs in his groin area and then slamming it behind his back, it was just like, oh, man. But
no, I agree with you. I just don't want to say that Michael Jordan's free throw line dunk was simple.
Simple.
Right.
So I was telling you about that movie Prisoners. I'm telling you, I hope you're hearing me out. It is just phenomenal. Like it's definitely one of those thriller crime movies that really has you guessing, and I would say you're going to be surprised at the end. But it's not one of those movies that, oh, that was really cool right at the end when I found it out. Before then, it was kind of boring. I mean, it's really good all the way through. It's definitely a big surprise movie.
I definitely want to see it, but I'm very wary about your recommendations, and I'll tell you why.
Let's hear it.
Okay, so Eye in the Sky, I loved it. You were dead on about that movie. In fact, I bought it. It was on sale for like $5.99. Sight unseen, loved it. But then there's Hard Rain.
Oh, come on, dude. You're going to judge me on a movie back in, what are you talking about, like 18 years ago?
Yeah, but I mean, you were like raving about this movie, and I was so psyched to watch it. And then I think I fell asleep like 5 times. It was so boring.
You know what? I'm sorry, but Christian Slater and Morgan Freeman were really cool in that movie.
Wasn't the guy who played an Alf, wasn't he on it? Like Mr. Achmonic or something?
I think so.
Or Willie or something. Willie Tanner, that's it. I think he was on it.
I don't know, man. I think if I watched that movie now, I would still like it. So
maybe. Okay.
What have you seen lately?
I've been watching all my horror movie films that I like a lot. But aside from that, I've been watching a lot of TV.
Yeah.
So like I just finished watching the second season of Narcos on Netflix, which is really cool. And I also finished watching Stranger Things on Netflix.
You like it?
Loved it.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
That was really good.
I'm starting the second season. I know the producer, and he's given me kind of a pre-screening of it. So
sweet.
Yeah, he's
Look at you, man.
Fan.
BC fans.
I'm just kidding, dude. Come on.
I know that.
How did my brother get so naive?
I know, dude.
Hey, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
And then we have to move on here to, this is so exciting, man. I'm really jazzed to talk to the national chair. That's right. Pastor with no answers. It's no big deal. I mean, me and Jared, been doing life, kind of chilling, reading our Bibles here and there, watching scary movies, trying to be loving husbands. National chairman of the Libertarian Party, the third biggest party. I mean, dude, we have arrived. We've got credibility now. Next thing you know, our next guests are going to look something like Mike Tyson, Sandra Bullock, and Akeem Olajuwon. I mean, it's going to happen that way. It's just going to start rolling out.
I'm super excited, man.
Yeah.
If we can just get Spud Webb in here, that would just be the ultimate for me.
All right, so let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Does a lesbian owe it to you to tell you that she's gay if a straight person asks her out? Like, if a straight guy asks a lesbian out and he's just like, but what if he says, hey, would you like to go out sometime? That doesn't suggest romance necessarily. I mean, that could be one guy saying to his friend, hey, would you like to go out sometime? Okay. And she's just like, oh, yeah, where you want to go? Oh, dinner and a movie. And then let's say he even takes her out to a decent restaurant. That still is not necessarily suggesting romance.
I disagree. So the context is these people know each other kind of well. Like, they work together.
They work together for 2 days. She's a new employee.
Then no way. I disagree with you 100% because that kind of move is based on physical attraction.
Okay. So, then what about 3 months into it and there's a friendship?
Then I agree with you. Then I think at that point there could be a blossoming friendship, and so hanging out on the friendship tip is totally
I think that's a double standard though, because you still.
What are you talking about?
Well, because you still have to make the assumption, hey, yeah, we're friends, but he may want to take it to a different level.
Oh, of course. There's always that possibility, but there's also the possibility of just being a friendship. Whereas in the first scenario, after a day or two, it's all about, interested in somebody physically. You're attracted. So you want it to be something more than friendship.
Okay. Next question.
Yeah.
So, and this really happened to me. I'm at Starbucks. We're hanging out with our kids, and really over the top awesome customer service employee. I mean, like most Starbucks employees.
Yeah, but over the top, that can imply like just too much.
No. I'm just saying, knocked it out of the park, man.
Okay, gotcha.
All right. So he was giving, my daughter a replacement drink because they gave her the wrong thing, and he's really nice and all of that. And I said, Rosa, will you please thank him? And he looks at me, and he's not laughing, and he's not being mean. There's not a scowl on his face. He said, I'm actually a girl. And so my question to you is, does it make it more of a awkward deal, or even make him like, does he feel bad if I say sorry about that? Or should I just be like, oh, okay. Like what, like because he obviously, she obviously has gotten that before, and she is obviously going for that look. It's not that, she is like has a weird physique or anything. I mean, she definitely has her hair cut a certain way, is dressed a certain way. So I don't think it's like coming out of left field. I think there's a certain look that she's going for. Does an apology, is that a slap in the face?
I would not apologize. So I can only tell you how I would handle it. No, I do have social anxiety. I'm very awkward, but I would do the latter. I would say, oh, okay. And I would totally play it off, downplay it 100%.
Yeah, like, gotcha, cool.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the moment you start apologizing, then it becomes an even more awkward situation. I don't want that person to feel bad. You know what I'm saying? And I also don't want it to make it bigger than it needs to be when I have a young daughter who's in the situation with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe it's cowardice on my part. I would say I'm being a coward. I just want to downplay and get out of there. But at the same time, I think personally too that move will also help mitigate any kind of further awkwardness in the situation.
Yeah. So we have Nicholas Sarwark. He is the national chairman of the Libertarian Party. We're super excited. Let's see if he, Jared and I, obviously we don't care about Trump or Hillary, so let's see if we go Gary Johnson, man. So we're here with Nicholas Sarwark. Man, Jared and I have been talking about this episode for a while, ever since we put in our calendars, man. We're pretty excited about this. So I mean, no offense, Nicholas. I don't really want to hear a whole lot of your background. I just want to get into these issues. But because I like people, I actually do want to hear, like, where do you live right now? How did you get into the Libertarian Party? Are you married? I mean, you're a really nice looking guy, so you have to be married. I mean, just tell us some stuff, man.
Okay, so I live in Phoenix. This is where I was born, and I lived all over the country growing up, and made my way back to rejoin the family business that I swore I'd never become part of. I had a couple careers before that. I was an IT guy for a while. Then I went to law school and was a public defender up in Colorado, keeping poor people out of cages for a while.
Yeah.
And now I sell used cars. We have the oldest used car dealership in Phoenix that my grandfather started in 1942.
Yeah.
Wow. And it's kind of, I mean, we operate with the integrity and this whole idea that we won't sell a car that I wouldn't put my own mother in and say, go to San Diego for the weekend. And that's like a unicorn in the used car business.
Yeah.
So it seemed like when my dad felt like he might want to retire pretty soon, it felt like it was worth keeping that business alive.
Yeah.
And so I'm back. I found the Libertarian Party, actually, my dad used to take me to Maricopa County meetings here in Phoenix when I was just a kid. And probably was 12 years old. I read David Bergland's book, Libertarianism in One Lesson, which is a short book. And it matched everything that I believed about, the world and politics and how things should be. And this was, when I was 12 years old, and nothing really changed. So I've never been anything other than a libertarian. I've been involved in the party since probably 98 or 99 when I got out of college. And I used to be state chair of the Libertarian Party in Maryland. I was vice chair of the Libertarian Party of Colorado. And in 2014, I went to Columbus and threw my hat in the ring to be chairman of the National Party.
Yeah.
And I was elected. I think I have the distinction of being the first chair who is younger than the party.
Wow.
That's awesome.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
there have been younger chairs, but the party was younger at the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So you're what, like 35, 34?
I am 37.
37. Okay. So yeah, you're younger than both of us. So what exactly is your functional role in the party, like on a day-to-day basis, week to week, whatever, because you're selling used cars and then you're also involved in, a third party here is this the biggest third party?
It is. We are the third largest political party in the country, and I have a family and 3 little kids. Yeah. I am married. I have a 5-year-old, 4-year-old, and a almost 2-year-old.
Yeah,
so
nice.
Keeps me busy.
Nice.
My role is I'm basically the spokesperson and chief executive officer of the National Party. If you know anything about how political parties are structured, I'm kind of like Reince Priebus.
Yeah.
Or I guess Donna Brazile is in that musical chairs spot on the Democratic side.
Yeah.
Except I'm good at what I do. And that's sort of a distinction.
Nice.
So let me say this about Jared and I, and I'll let him elaborate more about himself. But, just so you get a feel for us, and you're probably going to be a little disappointed in us, and that is that we were just head over heels into politics, I would say, a good 12 years ago. I think for me, the last election that I really was emotionally invested in was 2004. I mean, I could honestly say I would have been devastated if it went Kerry's way. And so,
really?
Yeah, totally. And now it's
we were both pretty conservative at that time.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And now I just feel like and some of the questions I want to ask you too is like, you're sitting there and you're listening to a debate, and like one person is saying one thing, that person's saying, well, that's just not true. And then that person says something, and that person says, well, that's not true. And I'm just like, I don't know what's true. I don't know, like, has there ever been a president that didn't like jump through all the political hurdles, and just was honest and didn't attack I don't know. I'm just at a point where I'm like, I know it matters, but I don't know if it matters whether or not I think about it a lot. So and Jared, what would you say about yourself? I mean, does that describe you too?
I guess so. And I think also 50% of that is the fact that while I really liked the conservative platform or the Republican platform at the time, I felt like no matter who was in office, it was pretty much the same. It was going to be gridlock. It was also going to be, lots and lots of spending, lots of deficits. And I just got sick of all that, because to me, it blows my mind that we have such a huge debt. And I just don't understand why we can't be more, fiscally responsible as a country. And so I guess that kind of sickened me as well. But it's the whole gridlock. Like nothing ever really seems to get done. There's always bickering and arguing on both sides. So yeah, that kind of soured me, I guess.
So Nicholas, admonish us here. Like give us a little give us a little kick in the butt. And
you don't need admonishment. Yeah. The thing about it is, there is one thing that has been said in all of the quote debates that they've had this cycle.
Right.
One of the candidates got up and said that the guy was unfit to be president. And then the guy got up and said that the lady was unfit to be president. And they're both right.
Yeah.
So that part, accurate, fact check, true.
Right.
But there's nothing wrong with focusing on, your day-to-day life and not getting too wrapped up on who's president, because to be real frank, it doesn't matter that much who's president. If it's a Republican or a Democrat, they're going to use that power to give favors to their friends and whatever special interests have given them a lot of money. They're going to continue to not make any hard decisions about cutting our spending. They're going to continue to spend our children and grandchildren's money into the future. They're going to continue to send our brothers and sisters and sons and daughters overseas to die in other countries' civil wars. And not a lot of that's going to change. I mean, there was a graph that they did about spending levels under presidents, Republican and Democrat. And it's funny because the one thing that conservatives and Republicans have sometimes pointed to is, well, but we're the more fiscally responsible. If you look at the actual data, the national debt grows more under Republican presidents than Democrats. So even the one thing that they claim, like, hey, if all else fails, this is the reason you should vote for us, is actually a lie.
Right.
And it's real sad. And the point of the Libertarian Party is there is a political party that believes in this idea that every American has a right to pursue happiness any way they choose, as long as they don't hurt other people and they don't take their stuff. And, is more focused on empowering individuals by reducing government control over your life, rather than this bickering over which one of us gets to write laws and take your money and give it to our friends.
Yeah.
It's like you've got two bullies at the door to the schoolhouse, and it's like, I'm going to take your lunch money or he's going to take your lunch money, but one of us is taking your lunch money. And voting Libertarian is kind of standing up and going, you know what? No, I'm not giving you the lunch money. I'm not giving either of you the lunch money. And yeah, maybe they beat you up, but you stood up for yourself and you said, this is not something that I'm going to be a part of. If you ever look at my Twitter account, my pinned tweet is that a bad person may be elected president on November 8th, which is true because there's at least two of them running. But there's no prize that they give out for helping with that. You don't win anything. It's not a bet. If the Redskins win the Super Bowl, I've got a ticket I got in Vegas. I actually make money on that.
Yeah.
For picking a winner. That's how betting works.
Yeah.
Voting is speech.
Well, I reckon I'm a libertarian. I reckon you got me. That's what I am. So, no, seriously.
Well, good.
So Nicholas, my question to you then, so what is the role of the government in the libertarian mindset?
So libertarians run a broad spectrum from people who, kind of want to go live off the grid and have no government at all, to people who just say, look, the Republicans and Democrats have failed us and we need whatever government we need. It needs to be a hell of a lot smaller.
Okay.
And it's kind of a broad spectrum, but for the most part, libertarians believe that it's the don't hurt people and don't take their stuff, right? So if you're going to have a government, they should stop me from, stealing from your house or killing your dog or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Crimes that actually have victims should probably still be crimes. and, some amount of national defense and some other constitutional functions, kind of minimal stuff. But for the most part, let people live their own lives, let people make their own mistakes. I mean, that's the whole point of growing up and being an adult. It's not the freedom to make the good decisions, because you could stay at home with your parents and make the good decisions. It's the freedom to go make the bad decisions and learn those lessons the hard way if that's how you need to learn them.
So I'm not being trippy. So cocaine in the privacy of your own home, if that's what you want to do, then knock your socks off.
As long as you don't make me do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
right.
It's not my business, right? I don't think it's a good idea for you to go to your kitchen and look under your sink and grab the bottle of Windex and drink it.
Right.
But I also don't think that it's worthwhile for us to spend my tax money and valuable police resources to have the you can't drink Windex law. And if we find you trying to drink Windex, then we throw you in a cage because that's going to fix it.
Yeah.
I was a public defender for 5 years, and I defended lots of people and lots of clients who were, had meth problems.
Yeah.
And methamphetamine's not the best drug of ever. I can recommend a lot more of them that are better. Most of the clients I saw, none of their lives really were made better by the fact that they used meth, but universally, none of them were made better by the fact that I was meeting them in a jail cell.
Yeah.
Or that they were now given a felony so they couldn't get a good job when they got out. Or that they had a probation officer they had to check in with 3 times a week so they couldn't keep a job if they did get one.
Right.
Or that they weren't allowed to live in a house because they had that felony. Or that they weren't allowed to see their kids and be part of their kids' lives because they had that felony. Like, all of those things are not helping.
Right.
And, whether the government's role is to help or not, it should be kind of like the Hippocratic Oath for doctors. Like, first, do no harm. Let's start by not actively making people's lives worse. And that would be a good place for the government to start. I mean, it would be a big step forward, if you ask me.
Yeah. So what about someone playing devil's advocate? And I know you touched on this a little bit, but what if someone said, well, what if people are so stupid and irresponsible that if the government stopped interfering, it would drive this country into destruction? Like, how would you argue against that?
I mean, there's just no data to support it, but let's assume that you're right.
Yeah.
Let's assume that people are bad, which is not an assumption I make a lot, but let's assume it. Which ones are you going to get to run the government? Where do you find the good ones? No,
Right.
tell me, seriously, where do you find the good ones?
I don't know.
I mean, if people are bad, do you think the people who are going out of their way to get power over other people are going to be good?
Right.
I have a bad feeling that, that I don't know who's qualified to run somebody else's life,
right.
But I know that the person who wants to run somebody else's life is probably the least qualified.
Well, what about I think I definitely think you're right, but wouldn't there be an outlier of someone that's just like, man, I just care about people? Like Billy Graham meets Martin Luther King. He's just like, man, I just want to help. Like, I want to get out there.
So have a revival. Open a soup kitchen. Like, get a tent and have a meeting. I mean, if you want to be the next Billy Graham, then be the next Billy Graham. Don't be the next, nosy neighbor telling me how to live my life.
So
go out and convince me that I should, find Christ or whatever.
Yeah. So
don't force me.
Yeah. So when Nicholas wants to be involved in the Libertarian Party, it is with the motivation of making the government smaller. So is that a fair tie-in?
It is. Limited government is one of the catchphrases we use, but the late Dr. Mark Allen Feldman, who died way too young of a heart attack, he actually had sought our nomination at the convention in Orlando. It was very tragic. He used to say that it's not so much about limited government as it is the corollary. It's about unlimited individuals.
Yeah.
So the point of making government smaller is to let individuals have more opportunity, more room to grow, more room to figure out something new. Like, look at Uber, for example. I don't know if you guys have Uber where you live.
Yep.
But it's light years beyond buses or taxis. And not only did it not operate, government didn't make that happen. government's been actively trying to stop it because they're like, oh no, we have to help our friends in the taxi cab companies because they gave us campaign contributions. So we're going to make it illegal for you to get a good ride for less money. Like,
right.
Get out of the way of those people, man. Let them do something. And if they fail, let them fail too. I mean, that's the flip side of it. All this bank bailout stuff, that's the most depressing thing for me about a lot of what's come out in the Democratic nominees' emails.
Right.
Is people are like, well, this is no surprise. This is how politicians work. It's like, when did we get to the point where we just accept corruption?
Right.
We just accept the fact that, hey, I have a government position, so I'm going to take $12 million for my charity from the King of Morocco to go have an event in his country, regardless of how it looks. Or, I'm going to go give a speech to big banks where I tell them, hey, I have to say these things to the public about how much you guys are really bad, but I think you're really awesome, and don't worry about me. I'll make sure that you're taken care of. Like, that side of it, that's the difference between libertarians and Republicans and Democrats, is no matter how much they talk about, we've got to crack down on Wall Street or unfettered capitalism, as soon as their friends at the banks are like, hey, I lost a lot of money. I mean, I know everybody lost their houses and stuff, but I'm going to lose money on these loans. It's like, no, we don't help any of the people who lost their houses, but we'll bail out that bank.
Right.
With the tax money from the people who lost the houses. Like, how disgusting is that?
Right. Yeah. All right, let's take certain demographics. Like we on another podcast, we talked to someone with some really interesting thoughts. I would say many of which I agree, as far as like the African American population and just how a lot of where they're at in society right now, a lot of them, finding themselves in failure situation, their living situation, their work situation, family dynamics, and all that stuff is actually a result of government, such as, females being motivated not to have a man in the house because that's the only way that she can get, money and welfare check. And so it's things like that the government institutes that sets these people up for failure. Like, describe the African American community, the Hispanic community, and like all of these minorities and what they would look like right now if libertarians were in power the last 30 years.
Well, specifically with minority communities, the first thing that libertarians would do is end the racist war on drugs.
Yeah.
And I have this verbal tick where I can't talk about the racist war on drugs without saying the racist war on drugs, mostly because the war on drugs is racist.
Right.
If you look at arrest ratios, if you look at incarceration ratios, whites and people of color use drugs at very similar rates per capita. But the incarceration and arrest rates are ridiculously high. Like, we're talking between 3 and 6 times as high if you're Black or Hispanic. And it's destroying families because you take a young person of color, you have them have an interaction with law enforcement. If they're lucky, it doesn't end up with somebody dead, although not as many people are lucky as we would like. But it still ends up with an arrest record. It ends up with them being on probation or parole or in prison. It ends up with them having to leave the family home.
Yeah.
Because one of the things about, to the extent that you have subsidized housing or anything with any kind of federal program, the politicians in Washington, to look tough on crime and tough on drugs, that's why people have to leave the home. It's because if you have that drug record, you got something on paper, then you're not allowed to live with your family, or your family has to go out on the street. Like, we literally destroy the fabric of an entire community so that people can look tough on crime and look like they're, being tough on drug users and drug dealers. And it's absolutely insane, and then the immigration thing is a place where the Latino community has been lied to by both sides forever. They say, oh, we love you guys. They love you right around election time. Right. But when it comes to actual immigration reform, when it comes to the fundamental idea, this is a thing that libertarianism is a lot about underlying principles. We believe in free markets. We believe that you should be able to sell me stuff and I should be able to buy stuff and the government shouldn't get in the way. But we also believe in free markets and labor, right? We believe that individual human beings have dignity and rights, and those rights don't end because they live on the opposite side of an imaginary line.
Yeah.
Right. A person in Mexico is no less a human being than you or I, just because they were, born there and we were born here. And so our vision is of an immigration system where it's kind of like, do y'all have concealed carry permits down where you're at?
Yes.
You know people?
I don't personally, but yeah, I know people that do.
Yeah. So there's this whole concept of shall issue concealed carry permits that has been sort of sweeping the nation. And the idea is you go in, you fill out the forms, you give your fingerprints, they do their background check, and then they have to give you that permit unless they can come up with a good reason why you can't have it.
Yeah.
Right. The default is you get that thing. And it's a real shift in gun rights in this country. My vision for an immigration system would be basically like a shall issue entry visa. You show that you don't have a communicable disease and you don't have a violent criminal record, and, give me your fingerprints and pay some sort of fee that hopefully will pay down our $20 trillion national debt.
Yeah.
And rather than giving $10,000 to a coyote who's going to smuggle you across the border in the back of a panel truck and leave you in the desert to die, which happens in Arizona all the time, we pay down the debt and we know who's actually here. Like, it's a great idea, but no one wants to confront it because everybody has some sort of special interest that makes money off the human misery of our current system, be it the border guards union or labor unions who don't want the competition. Competition's good for everybody except for the individuals who are kind of, outcompeted, right? Uber's great for every passenger. It's bad if you're a taxi company with bad taxis, but
Jared,
I'm sorry, not sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Jared, what is your feeling right now listening to Nicholas? I mean, it's kind of like fresh water, right? Kind of.
It is fresh water, but I guess my question though would be, it seems like, we have these great ideas, maybe these great ideals, but it seems to me that people going into politics always have these ideals, but the moment they have power, that power corrupts.
Yeah, Nicholas.
No, I'm just saying, so why? So are libertarians immune to this, power corruption?
No one's immune to it. I mean, everybody likes
that was more rhetorical
status. But we're easier to call on it. One of the things, and I don't know if this is going too far afield, but I wrote an open letter to the Republican vice presidential nominee, asking him to rescind his endorsement of his running mate and endorse Gary Johnson.
Yeah.
But I did it by appealing to the moral and Christian and conservative principles that he has espoused for his entire political career and said that he puts first before politics. And it didn't work.
Right.
I mean, he's still out stumping for that guy, regardless of his terrible lack of character.
Right.
But at least it's a yardstick, right? He's given himself a measuring stick and been found wanting.
Right.
But he's provided the stick with which to measure him. It's the same as anyone who professes any sort of religious or ethical beliefs. They've provided their standard by which they will be measured.
Yeah.
And so the advantage that you have with a libertarian or a libertarian politician is you can say when they've fallen short because it's got such simple principles behind it. This idea that, you want more freedom, not less. You want people to keep more of their tax money, not less. You want people to be free. And so if somebody gets in power and does something that looks like it's trying to control your life or trying to raise taxes or trying to restrict your freedoms, you can call them out on it from their own principles. And it's a great tool for keeping people humble and honest, and pushing back against those natural human instincts.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've just been so interested in asking you is it seems like most people I talk to, they're just like, I cannot believe, this is what we're left with to vote on. Like our pastor and our church is like, 12,000 people on a Sunday. And I mean, he even said, he was just like, man, we got one candidate where you can't believe anything she says. And then you got another one where you can't believe he just said that. I mean, everybody's just like, this is just ridiculous. What would happen if someone like Gary Johnson was just able to debate? Like, I mean, what kind of impact do you think that would have, considering where the American people are at with their perception of this whole mess in the first place?
It would have made him a coin flip to win the presidency. That's why they kept him off the debate stage, because you have a deli that sells, moldy ham and cheese or moldy roast beef sandwiches, and you can pick either one. They've got plenty of moldy ham and cheese, plenty of moldy roast beef. They cost the same amount of money. And you can have an argument all day over which one looks like it has more mold, and can I eat around it? And is the cheese moldy too? Can I get the meat out? I don't know. Maybe I just don't like roast beef, so I'm going to go with moldy ham and cheese. And Gary Johnson basically is like rolling up a taco truck with delicious tacos that cost the same amount. And it's like, of course they don't want to let the taco truck advertise in the deli, because you're going to go, wait, I don't have to have a moldy sandwich.
All right, so I
can go get a taco.
Yeah.
I'm getting a taco.
Yeah. So I want you to restate that. You're saying that if Gary Johnson was able to debate, there's a good chance he would be the next president.
At least 50-50. Yeah, if you look at Ross Perot, in 92, he was polling at 7%. He was excluded from the debates for the same reason they've excluded Gary Johnson. But
which is what?
Oh, because they only want Republicans or Democrats to win. The Commission on Presidential Debates was made by Republicans and Democrats. I mean, the co-chairman of the Commission on Presidential Debates is a guy named Frank Fahrenkopf, who's the former Republican National Committee chairman. He's been in his job since 1987. The current co-chairman on the Democratic side is Bill Clinton's former press secretary. It exists to perpetuate Republicans and Democrats. Kind of like Commissioner Goodell of the NFL doesn't care whether or not you're a Redskins fan or a Cowboys fan. Really could not care less. Would actually prefer that you be very adamant about Redskins are better than Cowboys or vice versa. Really doesn't want you to start watching soccer. That's the only thing that'll mess with him.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with the CPD. They don't actually care. That's why they have co-chairs from both sides. They don't care if a Republican or a Democrat wins, as long as only a Republican or a Democrat wins, and the American people fall into this trap of going, well, we have to pick between one of these moldy sandwiches.
Yeah.
And it's a thing. In 92, Perot was at 7%. George Bush thought it would give him an edge over Bill Clinton to bring Perot into the mix, right? He thought it was going to be advantageous. So his camp insisted that they wanted to bring him in. And the CPD actually pushed back on him, because they knew that this would set a precedent and, people would want this in the future, and they were pretty sure that they didn't want anyone else on the stage. The general election results, he got 19%, right? So that's double, and then, so call it, multiply by 1.8, give or take. I mean, my math's not so great. But let's say that Gary Johnson was polling at, 13%. If you multiply 13% by, 1.8. No, it's 2.8, isn't it? Yeah. So 2.8, it's 20. Oh gosh.
So that's almost 30, 38, 37%, right?
Yeah. In a three-way race, that's a plurality, isn't it?
Wow.
Yeah. Isn't it though? Funny how that works.
That's insane, man. I mean, that's like, I'm obviously not thinking at an intellectual level as you. For me, it's just observation, man. Everybody hates these people, and Gary Johnson just seems to be at least smart, at least respectable.
Yeah. Well, he's a successful two-term governor. I mean, he was elected as a Republican in a 2-1 Democratic state, and then reelected after vetoing like 750 spending bills. Jeez. And the biggest knock on him they've got is, well, he came in and he like vetoed a bunch of spending. It's like, yeah, he did, like he said he would, and that's why they voted him back in. And his running mate, Bill Weld, was governor of Massachusetts. Same thing, elected as a Republican in a 3-1 Democratic state, right. And on his reelection, he got 71% of the vote, which is still a record in the state of Massachusetts. So it's 3-1 Democrat. He's a Republican. 71% of the people put him back. And those are the guys we're running against a maniac and a liar. And so one of the famous gaffes, and the media likes to try and make Gary Johnson look like a goober because that's all they've really got, is he did an interview with NBC and he basically told the reporter, he's like, I could talk like this. And he held his tongue between his teeth and still come out with double the polling numbers because it's true. He could literally stand on stage for the entire debate. And every time they come to him, be like, I'm not those guys. And he would double. You know who I'm not? Those guys.
Right.
I am neither a maniac nor a liar. I'm just a successful 2-term governor who was able to bridge party divides, heal the broken politics in my state, and make it better for the people that live there.
Yeah,
I'm just the guy that they still wave to with all 5 fingers.
So Gary Johnson is not going to win this election.
Never say never. Never say never.
Should people vote for him?
Absolutely.
Like, all right. So
I'll tell you why.
Let's say there is no chance. Like, let's just say philosophically, there's 0% chance. Why should people vote for him?
Well, first of all, just fundamental premise. He is on literally every single ballot in every single state in the District of Columbia and all the territories.
Yeah.
Every American can vote for Gary Johnson. Every single one. So if you ever see a 2-way polling question, it's literally a lie. Because every American in this country can vote for Gary Johnson.
Yeah.
So anything can happen. You know, they didn't predict Brexit in the UK. They didn't predict Obama winning when Obama won. It all depends on who shows up and votes. So the first thing is, don't let them suppress your vote by saying, oh, he can't win. If you think he'd actually be better, like he's a guy you would trust with your car keys or to babysit your kids, and the other two, not so much, you should go out there and put your voice out there. But the other reason is, let's assume for a moment that it's unlikely he's going to win. Let's assume that. That means one of the bad people's going to win. And so the clearest message that you can send to one of the bad people is that you want peace and prosperity and a freer country so much that you're not going to fall for this politics of fear. You're not going to fall for them telling you, you know, you have to pick one scary option because the other option is scary.
Yeah.
And when you do that, it sends a much clearer message, because I'll tell you, the Democrat has already written off all the Republican votes as not worth paying attention to. And the Republican has already written off all the Democratic votes as not worth paying attention to. But Libertarian votes are worth paying attention to. And you go back to that example of 92 and Perot and the 19%.
Right.
Ross Perot didn't carry a single state. But all he would talk about was the deficit and how the deficit was real bad and we need to reduce the deficit. And almost 20% of the country thought, that makes sense to me. That's so important to me. I'm voting for this guy, not those two clowns.
Yeah.
A former governor of Arkansas who had never had any interest in deficit spending that I had seen prior to being elected president got us actual surpluses during some of the years of his presidency. And I don't think he did it because he suddenly found, economics and became a fiscal conservative. I think he did it because he wanted to be president twice. And he knew that 20% of the country had votes and they really cared about this issue. So if he wanted to keep power, he had to deal with those issues. So as a defensive vote, voting for Gary Johnson is way better than wasting your vote on a protest by voting for the person you hate least.
Yeah. Speaking of who we hate least, who are you more afraid of?
I don't think it matters that much.
Oh, come on, that's no fun.
I don't. So here's the thing. I think that we're asking the wrong question. And I don't know if you guys know who C.S. Lewis is. Is that someone you're familiar with from Mere Christianity?
Yep, for sure. Yep.
There's a good quote from there where he talks about how the devil always sends errors into the world in pairs of opposites. And he always encourages us to spend a lot of time thinking which is the worse. You see why, of course. He relies on your extra dislike of the one error to draw you gradually into the opposite one.
Wow.
And so rather than be drawn into error by spending a lot of time thinking which is the worse, I don't consent to engage in this game of deciding between a maniac and a liar.
Yeah.
The answer is no. I will not vote for either of them.
Right.
I don't think either of them are fit to run this country. I don't think I would trust either of them to park my car if I needed it parked, to babysit my children if I needed them babysat.
Yeah.
If either of them offered to go into business with me, I would grab my wallet and run the other way. And so it's a question of character and a question of trust. And so rather than worry about which bad person might be elected president, I'm working to get out the vote and drum up as much support for a good person so that, I can look at my children and stand up proud and be proud of who I supported. I don't have to contort myself into the pretzels that say Jerry Falwell Jr. has done at Liberty.
Right.
I mean, that's an institution my wife's father actually teaches there, that puts so much value on character, and to see them brought to the level of apologia for a man who brags about sexual assault, not someone who made a mistake and did his time or whatever, but brags about the fact that he gets to do it because he holds power over others.
Yeah.
I feel bad.
Yeah.
I feel bad for them.
Yeah, I think your quote from C.S. Lewis and how you applied that is just so true. I mean, I've seen I've seen on Facebook Christians that are saying, if you don't vote for Trump, like, you are in rebellion to God. And it's like,
What?
if you remove that out of context and like just put that in a different situation, like, Christians would be like, are you crazy? Like, what are you talking about? But I mean, basically they'll say, well, God says choose his life. Hillary loves killing babies. Trump's your man. I mean, it's just like 1 + 1 = 2. It's just insane.
Well, it also it presupposes that that's a live issue that a president can do anything about,
right?
Which is just, as a political matter, and I don't want to get all politics geeky on you, it's not a policy issue that's live at the executive level.
Yeah,
it does not matter there. It matters potentially in Congress. I don't think it even matters in the court.
Yeah.
I don't think you can swing the court because of how long that's been sort of a part of our national, I don't know, culture.
Yeah.
Or the weird detente we have where, we limit it here and we don't limit it there. And we have sort of this compromise that everyone's kind of settled down on. And honestly, you really going to believe a guy who has this long list of people that he's screwed out of their contracts when he tells you, oh, here's my list of people I'm going to appoint to be on the Supreme Court? Like, really? I mean, you've got some evidence here that maybe his word is not the most important part of his life.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So this may sound pretty ridiculous, but my brother and I mean, we both are pretty swayed by different conspiracies. Do you think that there is like a profound leadership or corrupt power that kind of oversees even the presidency, that if a party like libertarianism started to really gain some steam, and let's just say Gary Johnson, I mean, he is able to debate and he's just gaining traction. People are like, oh my gosh, this is going to make history. Do you think that for money purposes, people would find a way to like kill him?
I don't think anyone would kill him. I think it's a lot more mundane than that.
Yeah.
People with power want power. And so I think that they would try and buy influence with him the way they try and buy influence with everybody.
Yeah.
That's the big lie where you see the Republican and Democrat talking about how terrible the other one would be. But you look at who their donors are, you look at the people that they go to these closed door fundraisers with, they're all the same people, right? I mean, they may have a slightly preferred team, but they are not above giving money to the other one because they're trying to get special favors for themselves. I think, they'd move around it. They'd work for power in other ways. They'd do their best. Gary Johnson famously talked about, he had one contributor gave him like $30,000, which I think in New Mexico politics is a lot of money. And some bill came across his desk and he vetoed that bill. And this contributor comes into his office and he says, what did you do? Why'd you veto that bill? That was my bill. That was a bill that was going to help me. And he's like, I thought it was your bill. It was a really terrible bill. And he's like, but I gave you $30,000. And Johnson just looked him straight in the eye and said, did you want it back?
Right.
I'll give it back. But I'm not voting for a bad bill just because you gave me money.
Yeah.
Ain't happening. And that's, that's what we need a little bit more of in this country is politicians who have some balls and who are actually trying to help the country. I mean, look, Gary Johnson, I was talking to my dad about this before I came home from work today.
Yeah.
Gary Johnson doesn't need to be president. Gary Johnson had the largest construction company in the state of New Mexico. He's independently wealthy. He sold the construction company. He skis like 100 days a year. He lives in, I think, Santa Fe or Taos. He has a great fiance. Like, he doesn't need this. He's doing it to try and help the country, but he doesn't need a government job.
Well, I mean, you can say this.
And that's the guy you want to be president, right? The guy who's like, it's not going to be any fun, but, if I can help, I'd like to help out.
Yeah, but if you're looking at just finances, you could say the same thing about Trump and Clinton. I mean, they don't need that income. Is that what you're saying? He doesn't need the income?
Not just he doesn't need the income. He's not interested in power over other people.
Yeah.
Like, dude's from North Dakota. He is so upper Midwest. It's hard to... I mean, that's part of the reason that everyone makes fun of him, like how he talks and he's all aw shucks.
Right.
Like, that's just his personality. He's a humble guy.
But, I mean, you're definitely... You're convincing to me, but people could say, well, yeah, I mean, of course he wants to say and act like he doesn't want power over people. That's so he could have power over people. I mean, obviously people can say that, which...
Yeah. No, I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. But, I mean...
But philosophically, though, I think libertarians, philosophically at least, they tout not having power over people.
Right. So if you catch us getting power,
right,
you can call us out and be like, what the hell are you doing?
Right.
You're not supposed to do that.
Right.
You're a libertarian.
All right.
You can't do that with the Republicans or Democrats because they don't have any principles. They don't have any core. I mean, can you tell me, as a policy matter, give me an issue where Republicans and Democrats are different other than abortion and guns?
Maybe immigration.
What's the difference?
I don't know. Well, hearing Trump and Hillary talk in debates, Trump seems to be build the wall, keep them out. If they're in here illegally, kick them out. And Hillary seems to be more like, if they're already here, let them stay here. And so, to me, that's the only difference I see. I don't know how big that is or how real that is, but that's at least what they're saying in debates.
Since Obama deported more people than Bush did in the same 8-year period, I would say that how they talk is not necessarily indicative of how they govern, but it could be true. But other than those issues, there aren't policy differences.
Dude,
like
everybody knows the Republicans are always thinking through biblical lenses, man. Come on.
I didn't know this was a comedy podcast. I would have prepared my special underpants to make sure that I didn't pee myself.
No, I mean, I agree. And here's how I've heard it too, is like, what has changed so drastically about the United States since Obama took office from Bush? Like I mean, and maybe I have a privileged lifestyle being a middle-class citizen to where I haven't felt any significant changes, but it just hasn't seemed to change a whole lot. And
the health insurance screw up. I mean, that's the biggest thing. And that's about it. And that's a good thing to remember, is try and walk people back to their own life experience, right? Because I can't convince you of what I believe, but think back to what you were being told in 2008 about why Romney was so much more important than Obama, and why if Obama was elected, we wouldn't ever have another election, that, he would take over the country and turn it into some sort of communist / Muslim terrible wasteland or some whatever. Harken back to what people were saying and compare that to the right.
Now, is this McCain or Romney? Which one was saying that?
Oh gosh, I forget which one.
Okay,
that's right. Romney was the second time.
Yeah,
McCain.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. I try and forget that guy because he's my senator, and so I have like a mental block. It's the same as my sheriff, who hopefully won't be my sheriff anymore. Joe Arpaio. I don't know if you've heard of him.
No.
He gets some national news. He basically like gets posses to go try and round up illegal immigrants, and then gets, federal civil rights charges, which, what's super not conservative is when you're a bigot and you get caught being a bigot and violating people's civil rights, and then my tax dollars pay your settlements.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to be a racist bigot, do it on your own time, pay your own settlements. Don't do it while you're my sheriff, okay?
Yeah.
Like, just as a fiscal matter, like, it costs me too much money.
Is he popular? I mean, is he going to win again, do you think?
No, I think he's going to be out this time. He actually has federal criminal contempt charges being filed against him right now. There's a lot of sort of ugliness under the Republican Party, and you've seen some of it in this election. The nominee has sort of laid bare a lot of some undercurrents that I don't approve of. Mm-hmm. And I think that those people are in decline, and I think that, we may finally get rid of Sheriff Arpaio.
All right. Sweet. All right. So I know you got wifey and kid time coming up here soon. Yeah. So what I want to do is my brother's going to throw 5 different subjects at you, and I'm going to be strict with the time and limit you to 1 minute each. So basically there's 5 more minutes of this podcast, and you use that minute however you want. When that minute's up, I'm going to tell you another subject, or Jared's going to tell you another subject. You fair?
All right.
Good to go?
I can dig it.
All right, Jared.
So this is basically the libertarian position on these various issues. So number 1 is ISIS.
ISIS is probably someone else's problem, not ours. I mean, if we don't get involved in other countries' civil wars, then they don't try and make their civil wars be our civil wars. If we go get involved in Syria and arm these rebels against those rebels, and then those rebels lose their guns that we gave them, and then ISIS picks them up, and then ISIS shoots at us, and then they're all mad at us because we're supporting the wrong people. It's like a game that you can't win. It's like in Star Trek, the whole Kobayashi Maru thing, where, the only way to win is not to play. The way that you fight ISIS is you fight ISIS on the idea level. You export freedom and prosperity through trade, through diplomacy, through people visiting other countries, through people talking. You don't do it by sending bombs. Sending bombs doesn't convince anybody of anything other than you're the jerks who sent the bombs that blew up our wedding or blew up our funeral.
All right.
We're mad at you.
Next subject.
Don't we actually create these groups like ISIS, like the CIA, like indirectly create these groups? We use them to our advantage. Yeah, okay.
Sometimes indirect, sometimes direct.
Okay.
All right, number 2.
Right. Number 2, taxes.
Taxes. Taxation is theft. Now, there may be some certain level of theft that you think's okay for, having cops and roads and stuff like that. But I think when it comes to the government taking your money that you spent time and effort to earn, that taking should be as small as possible. And it shouldn't be used on things that you hate, like, I don't know, paying civil rights lawsuits for bigoted sheriffs, or bombing funerals in Yemen, or, abortion. If you don't love abortions, like, why should you be paying for them? So I think that, taxes should be a hell of a lot lower, and we should be a lot more careful about taking money to have the government spend it, because usually they just give it to whoever gave them the biggest campaign donation.
All right, number 3, Jared.
The deficit.
It needs to be dealt with. And the debt. I mean, we're almost to 20 trillion in national debt. I don't run my household spending more money than I take in, or if I do, I get like serious heartburn and drink too much. The government, again, is using taxation to take our money at the threat of being imprisoned. So they should have the decency to not spend more of our money than they actually bother to take, and thus indebt my children and grandchildren. And right now, like, we're up to like great grandchildren.
Yeah.
And lie to us about, whether or not Social Security is going to be there, or Medicare. I mean, we wouldn't tolerate any of this from an actual business. We would stop doing business with them. Why do we tolerate it from our politicians?
And I would say, personally, for me, this is what pisses me off the most, is deficit debt. I just think it's just ridiculous. And like you said, the way you framed it, we are forced to pay taxes to give up our money, and they're mismanaging it so much, and it just burns me up. Anyway,
it's insult to injury, basically.
Yeah, exactly. All right, next one, media influence.
Oh man, this is one where it's kind of up and down. The media kind of built up the Republican nominee, and the WikiLeaks emails later showed that they did it at the request of the Democratic nominee because it wasn't sufficient to rig her nomination. She had to rig the other one too, because that's the only way she could win. Her campaign manager said it, like, Trump's the only guy that she could beat. Anyone, including Cruz, who's kind of a nut, was a coin flip. Like, that's how bad of a candidate. Internally, they're like, you're not a good candidate.
Oh my!
So you have to elevate this crazy person so that you look good in comparison. The media built him up, and they built him up by giving him attention, but they thought that they had the power to bring him down, and they don't. The media doesn't have as much power as they used to because it becomes so obvious that they're trying to influence power that, especially the younger and independent voters, who are the ones who are majority supporting Johnson, they're seeing right through it, right? Like, you're trying to trick us, and it's fake, and it's obviously fake, and so we don't care. And so every time that they try and attack the Republican, it just makes him stronger. They can build him up, but they can't bring him down. So I think they're still powerful, but they're not as powerful as they used to be.
All right, Jared, you got two more.
All right, so this question, from a libertarian standpoint, who is the best president of the 20th century?
Man, you're going to throw it into the 20th century.
Yeah, you can't go to Lincoln or Washington.
Eisenhower actually warned us against the military-industrial complex and the fact that, if you let people who build bombs into the halls of power, then they're going to make sure that you have a reason to use bombs, because bombs are one of those things that don't expire. You just have to use them so that they can sell you more of them. And if you haven't ever watched the Eisenhower military-industrial complex speech, go find it on YouTube and watch it. It's terribly prescient, and it will frighten you. And then I have sort of a soft spot for Jimmy Carter, because he made it legal to brew your own beer, and he deregulated the airlines, which makes it so that it's, cheap to fly across the country. And really, that kind of networking, that ability for Americans to travel freely, was one of the best things of his presidency. There were a lot of bad things about his presidency, but between beer and planes, you got to give him a little bit of cred.
The Libertarian Party, folks, you heard it.
Absolutely.
How about 1 minute on the worst president in the 20th century?
The worst president of the 20th century. It's...
Don't be political now.
It's probably FDR.
Yeah.
Because he really was the first one to just nakedly grab power and expand government influence over all spheres of life, from how much wheat you could grow on your own farm to making a bunch of people job programs so that they depended on the government for their money and for their food, to threatening to pack the Supreme Court to get the decisions he wanted about letting the government control your life, to, getting us involved in a major foreign war in a way that, probably wasn't the right way to do it. And just, like, as far as making acceptable that level of government involvement in your life, there's no one like him. There are others that were more corrupt or, just kind of gave you an icky feeling.
Yeah.
But FDR probably did the most damage to the fabric of the country.
Interesting. Well, Nicholas, it's been awesome. Do you have any, closing words you want to say on behalf of your party, or giving you the floor here, anything you want to say?
If these ideas sound like things that you believe in, you should really check out the Libertarian Party. If you visit lp.org, you can get involved, find out how to get involved in your state, sign up, join, give us some money, support what we're doing. We are the only political party out there fighting for your life to live, your right to live your life the way you choose, as long as you're not interfering with anyone else's life, you're not hurting anyone, you're not taking their stuff. Check out Gary Johnson. Just go to johnsonweld.com or just Google Gary Johnson. I think you'll find that he's a choice for president who's the best person for the job and most qualified. And you'll feel good about yourself on November 9th if you vote for him on November 8th. And, you can find me on Twitter or Facebook or whatever. It's at @nsarwark or /nsarwark everywhere. It's the nice part about having a unique name.
Yep. SARWARK.
Yep.
Hey, thanks so much for your time, man.
Yeah. So, Joey, is it safe to say that the Pastor with No Answer podcast endorses Gary Johnson? Can we say that?
Hey, I will give that a hell yes.